everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kate, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to paint this easy winter windowsill. Let's get started. To start this painting, we first need to draw out our windowsill. So I am just going to use a ruler to get some nice quick straight lines to make up our windowsill. So I'm going to start in about the try to make my windowsill about center in my paper. So I'm just going to kind of roughly put in my lines. I'm not really measuring, I'm just using the ruler just to get a straight line. So just make a nice long rectangle as close as you can to the center of your page. It doesn't need to be perfectly center or anything like that, and you can always cut off some space, like some extra paper if you need to. So there's my rectangle, and then I'm just going to give it a nice border. And with this, I'm going to go very light because I'm going to need to erase, and I don't want to hurt my watercolor paper that I'm using because I'm drawing straight on it. So just with a very light head, I'm adding this border line. So a nice frame, and then I'm going to add a cross in the middle to create up 4 window boxes on each side. And again, you don't have to use a ruler for this, you can just go freehand. It's whatever you are most comfortable with. For me, I'm more of a perfectionist, and I just find this the easiest way to get some nice straight lines without having to erase over and over and over again. All right, so there we have our windowsill. I just erase the lines in between where the cross meets our original rectangle. And then all we have to do is I'm going to draw a curved line around the bottom. And this line is just going to be a guideline later on for our garland that we're going to wrap around our window. And then, before I forget, we're going to add snow to the bottom of each window box. So I'm just making some curved, loose lines to give the appearance of snow, and I'm letting it come off to where it's not going to be in a perfect little box. So just very loosely adding kind of like little clumps of snow that are just resting on the window. And then once you get all of the snow in place, we're going to erase the lines inside the snow. So just kind of keep it curved, no sharp edges, and then you can just take your eraser and erase all the lines inside. And then I'm going to go over the whole thing, and I'm going to lightly erase my lines so that I just have a very light guideline and nothing is going to show up too harshly. Now that we have our pencil lines erased, we can go in with our brown paint and fill in our windowsill. The color palette that I chose for this painting has a warmer feel to it, which I think is just great for a holiday card or just a nice winter painting. So I just mixed burnt sienna and Payne's gray together to get this brown, but you can use burnt umber straight out of the tube and you will get a very similar color and tone. So you don't have to feel like you have to mix these two colors together. Any brown will work really well. So while I paint the windowsill, I'm just going to try to avoid the snow that I already drew in place. So that's the only thing you need to worry about avoiding. squeezing the tip of your brush will really help avoid those areas that have the snow. Just going to mix up a little bit more paint. And don't worry too much if it starts to dry on you. We can always go back through with a second layer to soften up any of the lines that might have dried a little harshly against each other. And right now I'm going to mix together a darker brown, so just that same mixture of Payne's Gray and Burnt Sienna. And I'm just going to go back over my windowsill with this darker paint color, just to smooth out all of those little blooms that we got while it started drying on us. So since I already have that base, I'm going to try to move a little bit more quickly with this layer, just so I don't get those same harsh lines that I got earlier. Having a good wet mixture will also help keep your paint wet longer on your page. I'm not worrying too much about the bottom section right now with blending, because I know that my pine needles are going to cover a lot of that area. So even if those end up being a little bit more uneven with blending with the paint, I know that the pine needles can cover up a lot of those mistakes. And then just going to connect it all down here. Right, and there we have our window frame. We're going to let this dry and then we're going to come back and add more paint. For this next step, we are going to fill in the inside of our windows. So for this, I mixed up a really dark mixture of blue. And we're just going to start filling it in darker at the top, and then as it gets closer to the snow on the bottom, we are going to let it fade into a slightly lighter color. And again, we'll be trying to avoid our snow. We don't want it to touch our snow. So I'm just going to take a little bit of that paint off my brush and then just blend down this color so I have a nice gradient effect. Just kind of blend that out. All right, and then we're going to do the same thing over here. So just starting out with that darker color. I'm going to just take a little bit of that paint off my brush and then just blend that down. I'm going to add a little bit more pigment to the top here. And again, just blending it down. Right, and we're going to do the same thing with the two bottom windowsills as well. I just used ultramarine, cobalt blue, and Payne's Gray to get this dark blue color. But any navy bluish paint will work out perfectly for this. Any dark blue. Okay, I'm going to take some paint off my brush. I just love how this navy blue goes with this brown. I just think it's such a beautiful color palette. All right, and then one last window. I'm going to add a little bit that darker blue to the top part of this. Just like that. Now we are going to add our garland and some berries to the underneath part of our windowsill. So I still have that line in place that's going to be the guide for our garland, but I want to kind of put in the berries first so I have an idea of where they're going so I can make them a nice bright red. So I'm kind of just going to make a little line, add a berry, line and add a berry. I'm just going to do random clusters of them. Just to kind of give a little bit more detail to this painting. Right now, I think that looks good. As we go through, I'm going to see, I can always add more after the garland is in place. So I'm just lightly erasing everything. I don't want my pencil lines to really show through. And then I'm going to switch to my small detail brush. And I'm going to use a very thick wash of Alzarian Crimson. And I'm just going to go around and fill in my berries, leaving a small little white space in each berry just to give a highlight. Just tapping in some darker pigment. I'm actually just going to get rid of the little circle on that one. So there are my berries. So while those dry, we are going to add just a little bit of shadowing to the snow on our windowsills. So I'm just going to take some clean water on my brush, and we'll just start with one at a time. I'm just going to fill that white space with that clean water. I'm trying not to touch the brown or the blue that we already put in place. And you don't want to add too much water to where it starts to pool, just a nice gloss. And then I'm going to take a very, very light wash of cobalt blue. And I'm just going to put it right around the top part of the snow, just to give a very light blue shadowing effect. I'm going to clean my brush off, and I'm going to do the same thing to each section of snow. And that clean water will just help it seep in and blend naturally into the rest of the white area that we left. While I'm here, I'm just going to fill in this last one. And then just taking that light blue paint again. Just kind of guiding it along the edge. There's a lot of water right here, so I'm just going to pick that up with a dry brush. I can tell that it was grabbing my brown paint right here. And I can fix that later. I'm not going to go too crazy while it's wet or it'll start messing up everything. And I'm going to take that blue, come over here. And then I'm going to add a little bit more blue right along here. All right, and then we want all of this to completely dry, and then we are going to add in our pine needles. So now what we're going to do is we are going to add the pine needles to our garland that we're going to wrap around our window. So I have already mixed up a light blue-green paint color off to the side, and we are going to build up our garland with 3 different layers. So I just started with mixing sage green and ultramarine blue together to get this color. And then after I do this, I'm going to add some Payne's Gray to it to make it darker. And I'm just going to do that 2 separate times to start getting some darker paint to really build up the depth of our garland so it doesn't seem really flat. So I'm just doing quick line motions with the tip of my brush to get the garland shape around our berries and right underneath our windowsill. So I'm kind of avoiding the berries, just going kind of around them. And just keep working with those quick line motions until you reach the end. And then you are going to curve these lines around the windowsill. So right here, I'm going to start to curve. Still using the tip of my brush so they're as thin as possible. And just going to kind of curve it around. All right, and so now I'm just going to take a little bit of Payne's Gray on my brush and add it to that blue-green paint mixture. And then we're just going to repeat that exact same step. Just making some curved lines at the edge. Letting it come up over the windowsill. On either side, and I'm still wanting that first layer to show through, so still leaving white space and still leaving that previous color. We're just adding this layer on top. And then with this color, I'm going to go in and add a stem line. Just going to follow that guideline we originally drew in place. Because I don't want it to be too prominent, but I still want to see where the middle is. All right, and now we're just going to add a little bit more Payne's Gray to create our darkest layer. And then we're just going to repeat that same step, that same process. Adding those quick lines. And wrapping it around, just like that. So now we are going to let this dry, and then we're going to come back and add our next layer. Our next step is to add a nice blue outline of paint around our windowsill. So we're just going to take some clean water, and we're going to loosely apply it around the outer edges of our painting. And I'm just going to take that same dark blue paint we used before, and I'm just going to run it through very loosely along this clean water. And this is just going to give it a nice even blend around our windowsill, because we don't want this to be our main focus, but we still need something on the outside of our windowsill. And you can tell there's not a lot of space, at least in my paper, that I gave myself to work with. So just loosely apply that all the way around it. And then we are going to let this dry, and we're going to come back in with some snow. So now what we're going to do is we are going to take our white acrylic paint. You can also use white ink. You can use white gouache paint for this step, so any more opaque white will do really well. We're just going to take it on the tip of our brush, and we are going to actually tap in our snow. Usually I like to just splatter it everywhere, but today I want to actually tap it in place just to kind of mix things up and give a more detailed look. So just kind of have fun putting it everywhere. We want the snow to be like it's falling from the sky, all fresh, so it can go all over your painting. And you can still splatter it if you want. I just wanted to mix it up and see if I liked this different technique. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of snow on my pine needles, just for some resting snow that would naturally happen if there's a nice snowfall. Alright, and there you have an easy watercolor windowsill painting. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I hope you enjoyed this painting and found it helpful. If you did, please subscribe to this channel and give this video a thumbs up. If you'd like any extra details on this painting, like the supplies that I used, or just to see still images of this painting and its progress, head over to my blog. I'll have a link in the description box below. Hope to see you again soon. Bye.